Hey, I'm Hannah Mae, and this is my second template video over the second chapter. And this chapter is called Responsible Conduct in Scientific Research. This chapter basically starts with telling us about how scientists take great passion when doing their work and their experiments. And of course, there's going to be people that help them along the way, such as advisors and mentors. And we'll talk about them a little bit later. But of course, there's good and bad people in everything that we do. Um, so of course, there's going to be good scientists, but there's always going to be mistakes, whether it's on accident or not. And there will be certain ways that they will go about this process of misconduct. Then we get to a part of the video of the chapter about human and animal participants in research and how there are certain guidelines and rules that they must follow. The integrity of science is very highly held and it needs to stay that way. So, in order to keep this integrity, these guidelines need to be followed with entirety. Um, this chapter starts out with the introduction to like a responsible conduct of research. That's what this chapter is mostly about. And it talks about the like scientists have a drive to do what they do to pursue their research passionately, and like it'll talk about their intelligence, their standards, and it's like their triumphs of discovery. Um, like it says in the text, it says over many centuries, researchers have developed professional standards designed to enhance the progress of science and to avoid or minimize the difficulties of research. Just meaning like they do their best to avoid these bad things that can happen, such as misconduct. Then we get to the section of the chapter that talks about advisors and mentors. And these mentors are the people that take more of they can take a personal and a professional interest in making the development of this researcher the best as possible. An advisor really oversees the research and offers guidance when needed and like on the matters of connected to the research. Um, then we get to the part of the chapter about how you should really treat the data and how important this really is. Because I didn't know you could treat, I mean, obviously I kind of did, but I didn't really know that you could treat data a certain way. But of course, data needs to be treated with care and like be trustworthy and reliable and all of that sorts. But it has to withhold the scientific integrity. Like that's really just like their name and their importance and their reliability, trustworthiness, stuff of that nature. And it talks about how data is manipulated and how it occurs sometimes, and there are certain methods that researchers need to take and follow in order to maintain the integrity of research, um, so it doesn't deceive others and stuff. Like, especially in this day and age when there's AI and so many new technologies that can really hurt a scientist's reputation in a matter of seconds, really. Of course, like I was talking about, we all make mistakes all the time. I mean, there's good and bad in everything that we do. Um, but in scientific research, it's going to be errors. There's going to be problems and things are going to pop up. But these researchers need to try their very best to make sure that their research is accurate and reliable, and they must follow these methods in which to minimize these mistakes and keep their trust and their reputation so that science can go on and be a reliable source. Like in the text on page 11, it says researchers who are negligent are placing their reputation, the work of their colleagues, and the public's confidence in science at risk. So, really, misconduct has a huge toll on the science community and the science in a whole aspect, really. Um, in research, there's a lot of misconduct, and it's actually like called the FFP, which is falsification, fabrication, and plagiarism. These are all complete, like really high, like violations of scientific principles, and they will have really severe consequences. Just like I think of like in school, we all have a policy that we must follow that we don't plagiarize or participate in misconduct of any sort because we all know that there can be consequences in that for us too. Like we get kicked out of school, and that completely ruins our reputation in the same way that it could a researcher or a scientist and science as a whole, really. Um, then we get to how they respond to these violations and the professional like standards of things. And these things, like I said, fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism, they pose a threat to the integrity of science, and it just shows how misconduct can undermine the self-regulation of science, and it takes away the public's trust, and it just completely takes away the benefits that research give us to live our day-to-day lives. Like this research is what gives us the opportunity to be able to be on this computer right now. Like if it wasn't for science, this wouldn't even be a thing. Um, and then after we talk about these the violations and the misconduct and all this stuff, we stay on the topic of guidelines and things of that nature, but we move on to talking about human participants and animal subjects within this research. And it talks about how scientists must follow like certain guidelines to keep it ethical and regulations that protect these humans in research, and it makes sure that they give them consent. It minimizes like risks that they could have, and it most importantly, it keeps their privacy. Um, I don't think that I would really want myself, I wouldn't want to give myself to like research to like want to be researched and like, I don't know, like it's just not something that I would be interested in. Like props to them though, like for that's very brave of them, I think, in a way. But I think it's kind of scary. Um, but ever since we all know what lab safety is in research, I remember this specifically from my sophomore year of high school. My chemistry teacher beat this into our head about lab safety. We learned about it for weeks, I felt like. But it's just talking about in research and how it involves human participants and animal subjects and things of those natures, like, or other things like, of course, hazardous materials. That's what we all think of when we think of lab safety. Grant funds, and it just talks about how government regulations and guidelines have to be followed to keep this conduct ethical and of up to par per se. I didn't know that grant funds, like I had no clue that had anything to do with laboratory safety, and I still it's just really like it's interesting that so many things come together in this one um group of things. Like it's just crazy to think about, really. Then we get back to like the sharing of research results. We talked about this kind of in the last chapter, and it just makes sure, in short, like this is with like citations and stuff. We all learned how to do this in like high school. It just makes sure that these researchers and scientists get the credit that is deserved. They give credit where credit is due. It's the most ethical way for us to use others' ideas, and it just, of course, their research is published in the reviewed journals, like we talked about before. Um, and then, of course, we get back to competing interests and commitments and values. This is when researchers manage conflicts of interest and commitment, and can come from a personal. It can like come from personal issues, intellectual, financial, professional interest to main, and like this is just talking about how like their personal life can affect their work life. Like they have to keep these things separate and make sure that they can stay on task and they're not dedicating time to things away from their work when they should be doing things in their work. they have to make sure that their things are well balanced because they commit themselves to this scientific community and it needs to stay that way. Um, like right here in the text on page 31, it actually says researchers should be aware of these policies and understand how they benefit science and their professional reputation. In some cases, the conflict cannot be allowed and other ways must be found to carry out the research. Um, just basically what I just said about how they must keep their interests apart, like they need to keep their work in mind and they need to keep them separate and not get distracted per se by other things. Then we're told about the researchers in society. They have a reputation to withhold, and they need to keep it this way. Like they have responsibilities way past the scientific community that we have learned about. Like they have to reflect their work, and like they have to realize how big of an impact that this has on society. And when they participate in things in the public, they need to stay objective, and especially during like things of social change, they need to they just need to be they have to keep in mind the science integrity and their reputation because little things can really harm them professionally if they don't watch. To conclude, I really liked how where it's more in depth about how things are ran, especially with guidelines and responsibilities and things of that nature that were taught about the research and stuff. It really got into depth about the research and how all comes about and how they have to manage these things, or it can completely tarnish the scientific community or the science in total if these guidelines are not followed. And I really liked how they put it all together and it went into great detail for us to help us better understand research and research misconduct and even um, how humans and animals are used within this research. So, yeah, thank you.